committee to order. Senator Brown was just indicating, sitting in Senator Pat Leahy's seat, he was caring more about organics and dairy this morning. So we welcome you to this. And so speaking of welcoming new members, we are so pleased to have Senator Welch and Senator Fetterman as new members of the committee. We appreciate you and are so glad that you're joining us, particularly at this moment when we have such important work to do on the Farm Bill. So thank you. Also, we welcome our witnesses, Under Secretary Taylor, Under Secretary Moffitt, and Ms. Charles. Thank you for being here today on really, really important topics. And I know that Ranking Member Bozeman and I share the fact that we know we have a big job ahead, and we're working closely together to be able to pass the next Farm Bill with strong bipartisan support, and I'm really confident that this committee is up to the task to be able to do that. Last year, our committee examined USDA's research, rural development, and energy programs, and now we begin the new Congress with a review of the Farm Bill's horticulture and trade titles. These titles represent the breadth of American agriculture, supporting our specialty crop and organic farmers, strengthening our local food systems, building new markets abroad for all of our commodities and products, and delivering critical food aid across the globe. I'm proud that Michigan is one of our most diverse agricultural states in the nation. From dairy, apples, asparagus, to blueberries and cherries, Michigan farmers produce over 300 different crops. The message I hear from these farmers is clear. Federal farm policy can't be a one-size-fits-all model. In the context of today's hearing, let me speak specifically about specialty crops. Our fruit and vegetable farmers face rising labor costs, increasing import pressures, and emerging pests and diseases. I'm committed to passing a farm bill that will improve their ability to manage risks and market their products. Our attention to their issues is vital to keep our American-grown fruits and vegetables on our tables. Since the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, we have seen continued growth in the organic sector, which exceeded $63 billion in sales last year. We need to continue to support our organic farmers, including those transitioning into the program. It's also important that we made the local agricultural market program, LAMP, permanent in the 2018 Farm Bill. And we have seen a surge in demand for locally sourced foods during the pandemic, underscoring the need for more investments in our local and regional food systems. Globally, we are facing unprecedented levels of food insecurity, compounded by high food prices, supply chain challenges, and of course, Putin's war against Ukraine. Our farmers play a vital role in providing U.S.-grown commodities to feed those in need. And Farm Bill development programs help to build resiliency on the ground. The Farm Bill also creates opportunities for American farmers to connect with consumers around the world by providing marketing assistance and credit access. Agricultural exports have grown from $66 billion in 1996 to a record of more than $191 billion in 2022. That's more than 1 million American jobs on and off the farm. Our witnesses today will highlight how those vital programs support the diversity of American agriculture. The success of our agricultural economy requires continued investments in markets and opportunities for farmers. Whether they're selling to neighbors or exporting products globally, whether they're growing traditional commodities, specialty crops, or organics, the Farm Bill helps farmers put food on tables here and around the world. We all have a stake in continuing to make sure that happens. That's what this Farm Bill is all about. I'd like to now turn to my friend and ranking member, Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me start by welcoming the 21 returning members to our committee. I'm grateful that you've chosen to continue to serve on the committee. It's an important moment for U.S. agriculture, and I believe that together we will be able to craft the policies needed to maintain the world's safest, most abundant, and most affordable food supply while protecting the land, water, air, wildlife, and rural communities that we all care about. Additionally, I would like to welcome our two new members, Senators Welch and Fetterman, to the Ag Committee. I had the pleasure of working with Senator Welch when we were in the House, and I look forward to continuing our work here. Again, he's a good friend, and I think is going to be a great member. Senator Fetterman is the 11th member from Pennsylvania to serve on this committee since its founding in 1825. I look forward to his contributions and to work together in the future. Chairman Stabenow recently surprised us all with her announcement that the 118th Congress would be her last in the Senate. Leading this committee and serving as the third highest member of the Democratic leadership, Senator Stabenow has climbed her way up the ladder to serve not only the people of Michigan, but the many Americans who have benefited from the policies and programs she has championed. I have no doubt that over the next 2 years, the chairwoman will continue to pursue her goals as determined as ever, and I know that determination will be key to passing the next Farm Bill, which brings today's hearings. Madam Chairwoman, thank you for convening today's hearing, which builds on our work from last year and kicks off our most important task for the 118th Congress, drafting and passing a Farm Bill. As we begin to create the next Farm Bill, it's important to understand the environment in which we find ourselves. In December, the year-over-year Consumer Price Index settled at 6.5%. The annual average inflation in 2022 was 8%, the highest in more than 4 decades. Inflation is hammering the country and is not yielding anytime soon. In the farm sector, this was seen in record high production expenses, including fertilizer, fuel, labor, land, taxes, interest, and feed costs, among others. The only saving grace for many farmers was relatively high commodity prices, and backing those higher prices was a surge in agriculture exports. During this last fiscal year, U.S. agriculture exports increased by 14% to a record of nearly $200 billion. While headwinds on trade are beginning to develop, it's important to have a focused and proactive trade agenda to support farm and rural economies. The Farm Bill contains several programs intended to assist with trade promotion activities, including the Market Access Program and the Foreign Market Development Program. I look forward to reviewing the effectiveness of these programs and ensuring our investment matches each program's needs. Trade only works if trading partners live up to the agreements that they sign. When they don't, they must be held accountable. I'm pleased that one of the first official acts of Ambassador McCaleb and Undersecretary Taylor was to travel to Mexico and appropriately confront the government for proposing to ban imports of U.S. biotech corn, a significant departure from science-based trade policy. As many countries around the world advance anti-farmer and anti-production policies, the U.S. must actively promote and defend science-based technologies to help American farmers and ranchers continue to feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Global food security will only improve if we embrace scientific advancements that allow for more productive and sustainable agricultural production. Today, more than 1 in 10 people around the world, around 828 million people, will be going to bed hungry. Beyond that, nearly 350 million face acute food insecurity, which is more than double the number in 2019. Amidst man-made conflict, economic shocks, high supply chain costs, and the resulting food price increases, we are seeing food being taken from the hungry to give to the starving. During my travels to East Africa last fall, I saw the impact firsthand of conflict in the Horn of Africa, which leads many to seek refuge in Kenya and other surrounding countries. However, the unrelenting drought in this region means all countries face a significant food shortage, and U.S. commodities provide a vital support to fighting the hunger problem. The U.S. has consistently been a leader in delivering food assistance around the world, beginning with our efforts following World War II. Our emergency and non-emergency programs continue today, and many are authorized under the Farm Bill. Americans should take great pride in the Food for Peace, Food for Progress, and McGovern-Dole programs. These programs not only have saved and transformed lives in some of the world's most desperate situations, they have also created tremendous goodwill towards the U.S. and U.S. In recipient countries. Today's hearing will help flesh out some of the most consequential aspects of U.S. agriculture and food security. I thank our witnesses for joining us today and look forward to the hearing. And again, thank you very much for being here. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll now introduce our three witnesses and then ask each of you to give us 5 minutes of opening testimony before questions. Alexis Taylor is the Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs. Prior to this role, she was the Director of the Oregon Department of Agriculture. She also has experience with the United States Department of Agriculture and in Congress, having worked as an advisor to Representative Leonard Boswell of Iowa and Senator Max Baucus of Montana. It's good to have you back. Our next witness is Jenny Moffett, who serves as the Undersecretary of Marketing and Regulatory Programs. Before joining USDA, Undersecretary Moffett held multiple leadership positions within the California Department of Food and Agriculture. She's also spent 10 years as the managing director of her family's organic walnut farm in California. Thank you again for being here. And finally, Sarah Charles is the assistant to the administrator of USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, the U.S. government lead for international disaster response. Prior to her current position, she held roles at the International Rescue Committee and the National Security Council at the White House. Thank you so much for being here as well. We'll turn to Undersecretary Taylor.
Good morning, Senator Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and members of the committee. I am pleased to be here with colleagues from USDA and USAID. Chairwoman Stabenow, I would like to particularly thank you for your leadership and dedication, not just to this committee, but to the entire agricultural sector over the years. While you are not leaving us quite yet, you will be missed. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss trade, market development, international food assistance, and capacity building programs authorized by the Farm Bill under the Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs Mission Area. This mission area promotes U.S. agricultural exports, works to reduce barriers that impede trade, opens new markets for U.S. farm products, and contributes to global food security. The TFAA mission area oversees the Foreign Agricultural Service and the U.S. Codex Office. FAS is USDA's lead international agency, linking U.S. agriculture to the world to enhance export opportunities and global food security. FAS supports our food and agricultural sector with a network of economists, marketing experts, negotiators, and trade specialists in DC and in nearly 100 offices around the world, covering over 180 countries. We are proud that our role in opening and maintaining markets has resulted in a new record, as been highlighted here, in agricultural exports of over $196 billion last year, topping the previous year's record by 14%. And while those numbers are impressive, what is more impressive is the real-world impact those exports have to our producers and their rural communities. U.S. agricultural exports support more than 1 million jobs here at home and contribute more than $154 billion in additional economic activity. Over numerous farm bills, Congress has authorized and refined an effective combination of agricultural market development programs and export credit guarantee programs. These programs are designed to develop markets, facilitate financing of overseas sales, and resolve market access barriers. We partner with a diverse group of cooperators representing U.S. food and agricultural industries and manage a toolkit of trade promotion programs to help U.S. exporters develop and maintain markets. A recently prepared study for the U.S. Grains Council found that USDA export market development programs generated a high benefit to cost ratio for U.S. agriculture, but also the overall economy. This study determined that U.S. agricultural export value increased by over $24 for every dollar invested in export market development. Likewise, we are equally as proud of our international food assistance and capacity building programs, which provide assistance that has helped millions of people around the world. I've seen firsthand the impact of this work to help developing countries improve their agricultural systems and build their trade capacity to receive our exports, or supply us with products the U.S. needs to meet consumer demand. Before developing countries can become customers for U.S. agricultural products, they must first become politically, economically, and socially stable, and our programs support this work. USDA-sponsored fellowship and exchange programs invest in the future of developing countries by enabling international researchers, policymakers, and agricultural specialists to work alongside their U.S. counterparts, acquiring the knowledge and skills to help build their country's agricultural sectors. By helping developing countries strengthen their agricultural institutions and foster regulatory systems that support science-based trade policies, these programs also help to improve international market access for U.S. agricultural products. I am proud to lead USDA's efforts to improve foreign market access for U.S. products, diversify into new markets, and improve the competitive position of U.S. agriculture in the global marketplace, all while working to uphold science-based standards, and equally as important, support food security of millions of people around the world. We look forward for the opportunity to refine our programs as Congress works to reauthorize the Farm Bill so we can make U.S. farm policy more efficient, effective, equitable, and sustainable while providing greater export opportunities to a vast range of markets for the benefit of our farmers, ranchers, and food businesses. Thank you again for having me, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Undersecretary Moffitt.
Thank you, Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and members of this committee for the opportunity to be with you today, and for the wide array of resources you have provided USDA as we partner with farmers, ranchers, and producers to strengthen American agriculture. In my travels as Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, I have seen the impact of the Farm Bill and the importance of the programs in the horticulture title. And I've heard directly from farmers and ranchers about how they benefit from these programs and our work at USDA. Growing up in a small community with a family of farmers, I've seen the benefits of the Farm Bill firsthand, and I know the ingenuity and the passion that farmers and ranchers bring to the challenges and rewards of producing the food that feeds us all. Over the past few years, we have seen the challenges that farmers and ranchers face, particularly in accessing markets to capture their fair share of the food dollar. Even with record farm income, many farmers, too many farmers, some 89%, must work off-farm to meet the needs of their families. We know that small and mid-sized farmers are impacted the most, and there are still far too many barriers for new and beginning farmers. Under the leadership of the Biden-Harris administration and Secretary Vilsack, and with the support of leaders on this committee, USDA has been hard at work to address these challenges and strengthen our food, agricultural, and rural economies. Strengthening and transforming local and regional food systems is one priority of our efforts. The local agriculture marketing programs in the 2018 Farm Bill and our newly created local food procurement programs are putting rural prosperity front and center, adding value to where food is produced, ensuring that capital stays in the communities, and ensuring and leading to long-term economic growth and vibrant rural communities. These programs create a win for local farmers, local economies, and for people's health. From Eastern Market in Detroit, Michigan, to the Alabama farmers supplying their local school districts, I've seen up close the excitement that farmers, schools, food banks, and communities have for these programs. And I've also heard about the fact that our access to our programs is also important. It's one of the reasons why we launched the USDA Regional Food Business Centers and why we have received over $1.8 billion worth of applications for our $400 million program. These centers will provide exactly the needed assistance, coordination, and capacity building to help farmers, food businesses, and rural economies thrive. Enhancing the competitiveness of specialty crop producers is another vital part of our work. And thanks to the support and leadership of this committee, we are excited that this year the Specialty Crop Block Grant will have awarded $1 billion in funding for projects across the country to support vital, critical research for marketing, education programs for producers, and to support our local economies. In addition, we are committed to growing organic markets where producers use climate-smart production methods that can meet ever-changing consumer demand for a variety of projects. We just capped a series of rulemaking to promote fair and more competitive markets for organic producers, including the recent strengthening organic enforcement rule as required in the 2018 Farm Bill. These rules, coupled with our Organic Transition Initiative, are directly addressing challenges facing organic farmers with new programs that will provide technical assistance, farmer-to-farmer mentoring, paying for voluntary conservation practices, and building targeted organic markets. We're also supporting farmers as we safeguard crops from pests and diseases and assuring our trade partners of our high-quality agricultural products. And while outside of the horticulture title, I am also proud of the work that we're doing to protect animals from pests and diseases, thanks to the resources provided in the 2018 Farm Bill. So it is fitting to be here today with Undersecretary Taylor, given the close working relationship between our technical experts at APHIS and the team at FAS as we work together to ensure international standards and strong trade are built on sound science. There is more work ahead for sure, but one thing is clear. Leveraging resources in support of better and more competitive markets for U.S. farmers, ranchers, and consumers is in the best interest of our nation's economy, our nation's food system, and the environment. With the support of Congress, I believe we can and must continue this effort. And I look forward to working collaboratively with members of this committee and Congress as you work to draft the 2023 Farm Bill and continue to champion American agriculture. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, Ms. Charles, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Ms. Charles.
Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss USAID's food assistance programs authorized by the Food for Peace Act. As a result of this committee's leadership and support, the United States is the world's largest donor of humanitarian food assistance, at a time when these programs have never been more critical. As Senator Bozeman outlined, today we're in the midst of an unprecedented global hunger crisis. Analysts estimate that acute hunger levels are 70% higher than pre-pandemic levels in 2019. Amid these record high levels of need, U.S. leadership to fight hunger could not be more important or more evident. In fiscal year 2022, USAID and USDA drew down the full balance of the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Trust, and in total, USAID programmed $2.2 billion in Title II emergency assistance. With these funds, we provided a significant infusion of American-grown commodities to countries at highest risk of famine around the world. Our leadership is most evident in the Horn of Africa, currently experiencing the most severe food security crisis in the world. In Somalia, northern Kenya, and southern Ethiopia, 5 forecasted rains have failed. The sun has dried up endless miles of orange, cracked earth, and millions of livestock have died. In the Horn, where I traveled this summer, I met mothers like Adina, a pastoralist and a mother of 7. When the ground dried up and food vanished, her livestock ate plastic sheeting out of desperation. All 18 of her livestock, her entire livelihood, perished in the drought. With no livelihood, Adina and one of her daughters developed signs of acute malnutrition, and Adina worried that her young daughter might die. Thanks to Food for Peace assistance, Adina and her family received nutrition support from our partners, and her daughter has now fully recovered. This aid was part of a broader U.S.-led mobilization of funds that has been key to preventing the onset of famine in the Horn, and in particular in Somalia. However, as we speak today, a 6th failed rainy season is forecasted, and food security in the Horn continues to deteriorate. Without sustained assistance, famine is projected to emerge this spring. While USAID is taking every step possible to meet needs worldwide, we also face a sharp decline in humanitarian resources now that the agency has exhausted the generous supplemental appropriations provided by Congress in 2022. We continue to call for other international donors to step up, and we're also looking for ways to drive greater efficiency in our programs. Over the past decade, we've been grateful for bipartisan support from Congress and for reforms made during the previous Farm Bill reauthorizations to ensure that Food for Peace programs can meet the humanitarian challenges of the day. Today, the scale of global need and skyrocketing costs have stretched the limits of these programs, revealing constraints to USAID's efficiency. As this committee works to reauthorize the Food for Peace Act this year amid a historic global food security crisis, there's an opportunity to maximize American generosity and save even more lives. Technical changes to the legislation could improve the impact of U.S. food assistance while maintaining the proud legacy of Food for Peace programs. For example, reducing complex accounting requirements associated with the Food for Peace Act would enable partners to spend more effort on delivering food assistance while maintaining strict oversight of funds. Simplifying accounting systems will also reduce barriers to local organizations face in becoming partners. As you look forward to reauthorizing the Food for Peace Act, I'd also ask you consider updating the non-emergency authorities to make U.S. commodities and resilience programs a programming option rather than a requirement. These non-emergency programs, known as resilience food security activities, are a relatively small but important part of our toolkit in fighting global hunger. These programs target the poorest households in areas of recurrent crisis and help families graduate from dependence on humanitarian aid. We would welcome working with you on adjustments to this program to give partners greater flexibility to design programs that are tailored to the unique context and most likely to reduce need for humanitarian assistance in the future. Maximizing these programs will have significant benefits. An impact evaluation on Food for Peace resilience programs, or RIFSAs, found that for every $1 invested, households could see over $3 in additional benefits, helping families move out of dependence on aid. As we confront a hungrier future, U.S. assistance programs have never been more vital. Thanks to this committee's partnership, all around the world, nutrition products and commodities stamped with the words, "From the American people," save lives, are an affirmation of American values worldwide, and a source of hope to those affected by some of the world's worst crises. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. We'll now start with a round of questions from the committee, 5-minute rounds. And Undersecretary Moffitt, let me first talk to you about specialty crops. I was pleased to author this title, the horticultural title, back in 2008. I didn't know that you didn't routinely add titles. It was a very big fight, but we got it done. And from us in Michigan, as a group, we grow more fruits and vegetables than anything else, certainly from our Michigan agricultural economy. And it's almost half the cash receipts of the country. So I'm glad we have a title that represents the interests of these products. But could you talk about ways we could strengthen domestic markets for our specialty crop farmers, including local and regional markets? Just speak a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Senator Stabenow, and thank you for your leadership on the specialty crop block grant and advancing specialty crops, both domestically as well as abroad. Particularly on domestic, the specialty crop block grant is a strong partnership with state departments of agriculture as well as the specialty crop industry to identify over 12,000 projects that are happening and have happened around the country enhancing the specialty crop industry. The projects that are being funded, one example is for the red tart cherries to create a new beverage product that has increased the consumption of red tart cherries grown in your home state of Michigan. That has added more than $4.8 million to the sales of that program. That is just one piece of it. Also, addressing production challenges is another part. What I was really excited to see when I visited the state of Alabama is the local agriculture market programs, the local procurement programs that we're doing, coupled with the specialty crop block grant programs together, are building a new economy in Alabama for specialty crop producers where they have access to local markets at the same time that the grant programs are addressing critical research as well as education needs. So these programs combined are really enhancing and growing domestic, particularly local specialty crop, so that our communities have access to the great healthy produce and food that is grown in our communities.
Thank you very much. Undersecretary Taylor, how can we improve the ability of specialty crop farmers to compete internationally in international markets, especially considering the unfair competition they face from heavily subsidized imports?
Chairwoman Stabenow, thank you for this question. I think it is really important in thinking about how trade policy works for all of our diverse agricultural producers here in the United States. So as I think about this question, first and foremost, we need to make sure our specialty crop producers have open access to markets. That's access to markets here, and obviously Undersecretary Moffitt works very closely on those, but markets abroad as well. I actually just met with the specialty crop sector 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about how they have leveraged some of the technical assistance for specialty crops task, which is a program the Farm Bill has created and funded, and how important those technical projects are to knock down trade barriers that they're experiencing. So programs like that, I think, are critical to helping our specialty crop sector access new markets around the world. Additionally, I think ensuring our trading partners are operating fairly, and that trade commitments that are being made to our specialty crop producers and trade commitments broadly are being lived up to, and enforcing them when they are not. So I think it is a multi-pronged approach that takes that we have to focus here domestically, but then also internationally.
Thank you very much. Ms. Charles, we know, and you've spoken about the fact that food aid programs are incredibly important. A number of years ago, I led a CODAL through the Agriculture Committee to Africa, and we saw close how significant this is. And because of the weather disasters and the growing climate crisis and so on, things are even worse, I know, than when we were in there. So we have to provide emergency food assistance. We also know growing local markets and building resiliency is important. So from your perspective, how can we improve these programs while maintaining a variety of tools in the toolbox and ensuring that in-kind commodities remain in the mix?
Thank you for that question, and I'd certainly welcome CODELs in the future. I think we have a lot to share and a lot that the American people and this committee can be proud of that we're doing in the Horn and elsewhere in the world to address food insecurity. The vast majority of our Title II assistance is for those emergency food aid programs, and I think there are some efficiencies that can be gained that allow us to layer in IDA-supported assistance with those, simplify accounting of those programs. But I also think, speaking to your point about building resilience, a small portion of these programs, about 10% of the program, is really geared towards graduating people off of dependence on food assistance. And I'd love to work with you all, with your teams, on some greater flexibilities in those programs that allow us to really tailor them to the specific context, including in some contexts not using in-kind commodities, if that's the most appropriate way to program.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll now turn to Senator Boozman.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. What I'd like to do is yield to Senator Grassley. He's made great effort to be here. We appreciate him showing up and has some important questions he'd like to ask. So with your permission, we'll trade.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Senator Grassley.
Thank you for the accommodation. I appreciate it very much to the distinguished leaders of this committee. My questions are for Secretary Taylor. I'm glad you're on the job now, confirms, because in your position, you're going to be a lead advocate for U.S. farmers across the world. And everybody on this committee knows that when we produce a third more than what we consume domestically, that international trade to get that out of our country to around the world is a very important issue for prosperity in agriculture. So when it comes to agriculture trade, the concern I hear most from Iowans is access to Mexico's corn market. I'm sure other senators have this same concern, with over 90% of the corn acreage in the United States being planted to biotech seeds, and Mexico being the #1 purchaser of U.S. corn. I'm concerned that this decree is not being met with urgency that it deserves. This is the case for both Iowa producers and, most importantly, for food insecurity in Mexico and around the world. As the former chair of the Finance Committee, I was glad to lead the effort for the USMCA, which ended up getting 89 votes. I was pleased to see yesterday that the U.S. Trade Representative has formally established a second USMCA dispute settlement panel to hold unfair Canadian dairy tariff rate quotas policies accountable. So the question is for you, Alexis, why has the Biden administration not established such a dispute settlement process under USMCA panel with Mexico on this issue of GMOs?
Thank you, Senator Grassley, for that question. I would say that I do think we are engaging with urgency on this issue. We certainly appreciate the potential impact that the proposed decree could have on our corn growers here in the United States, but much broader than that. Fundamentally, our trading system globally, but also within the USMCA, is built upon science-based policies. And the challenge to that is greatly concerning. I have heard from specialty crop producers, livestock producers, all with the concern of Mexico, with this decree, moving away from that fundamental principle. I, on my third week on the job, and Ambassador McCaleb's second week on the job, we traveled jointly to Mexico to again engage with our counterparts there, highlight our concerns, highlight that this is a fundamental principle from the United States on what a global trading system is built upon, and not something that we can walk away from or negotiate away from. We continue to have those conversations with our Mexican counterparts. And we're reserving the right of all the rights awarded to us under USMCA, and we will continue to ensure that our trade that has been granted, trade access that has been granted to us within USMCA is lived up to by all of our trading partners. And look forward to working with you in this committee on this very important issue, because it is a fundamentally critical question that we are answering here.
Are you aware of any timeline to start the negotiations, get the process in place?
Senator Grassley, I would say we're still, I think, productively engaging with Mexico. We have been very clear that the USMCA gives us a process to go down if we cannot find resolution on this issue, and that we reserve all of those rights. But at least today, we are still productively engaging and hope to find a resolution that doesn't disrupt trade, impact our producers, and ultimately impact negatively Mexican livestock producers who are dependent on this product as well.
For you, Secretary Taylor, a key component of the Farm Bill includes investments in export market development programs authorized under Title III. These investments help promote U.S. products in emerging and developed countries and can pave the way for bilateral agreements. Free trade agreements are essential for U.S. agriculture products and in making sure that our producers can compete on a level playing field. As Undersecretary, do you think that your programs can pave the way for bilateral agreements?
Senator Grassley, I think our market development programs are critical in a host of ways and areas. First, it helps build the bridge to relationships, and trading is still very much about relationships. Connecting buyers and sellers with products that we have and products that they want. At the same time, they also help to address many technical barriers to trade that our producers are experiencing and our exporters are experiencing in markets. So I do think as we utilize these programs in partnership with industry, they help strengthen the ties and strengthen our economic ties as we continue to look for new diversified markets. And I think they are critically important to those record $196 billion of agricultural exports that we saw last year.
Thank you, Secretary Taylor, and thank you, leaders of the committee, for accommodating me.
Absolutely. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I join others in extolling your leadership. And I've known the chair of this committee from time in the House together, and we sit on two committees in the Senate, and she always puts workers first and people first and family farmers first, and I'm so appreciative of that and the kindness you show around here to other members, which is not always the case for all of our colleagues, so thank you for that. Senator Fetterman and Senator Welch, welcome to the committee. I noticed that no Republican got off the committee, so I understand that too. So, Undersecretary Moffitt, let me start with you. Thanks for being here. The pandemic highlighted the vulnerability of long global supply chains in agriculture and in industry and throughout our economy, and the need for more locally and regionally produced food. Chair Stabenow and I have been advocates for a long time of local food and proud to have played a role in creating the LAMP program, the Local Agricultural Market Program. The last Farm Bill was a great step towards strengthening local and regional food systems, but more must be done. It's why Senator Thune and I are introducing the Strengthening Local Processing Act. Our bill's about expanding local meat and poultry processing infrastructure. It's critical if we're going to lower prices and address corporate consolidation, the ever-encroaching corporate consolidation in the meat industry, as we've seen in far too many places in agriculture and our economy overall. I'm working on a bill to strengthen lamb support, increased USDA procurement from local producers. I've heard concerns from organizations in Ohio under Secretary Moffitt about the application process. The program can be too difficult to access for lower, let's just say lower resourced and underserved communities. I know we can fix that. I need your help. I know we can count on you to do that. Give us some thoughts on how we will work together on this, please.
Senator Brown, thank you for that question, and thank you for your leadership on the local agriculture marketing program. As you said, at the height of the pandemic, at the early stages of the pandemic, we saw how important local and regional supply chains are, and the LAMP program particularly is valuable in building those bridges and building the connections and the capacity for both communities, for buyers in those communities, as well as farmers and producers in the communities, to really foster those relationships so that we can get more product grown locally, produced locally into the local food system as well, enhancing our supply chains and really giving more choice for farmers to access more markets, as well as more choice for consumers to be able to buy from local farmers as well. Regarding your question on accessibility of the LAMP programs and the application process, I really want to thank you for that question and for the leadership in the 2018 Farm Bill directing the Agricultural Marketing Services to work on this. Agricultural Marketing Services has done a few different things. We have worked directly with producers as well as resources at universities to create things like guidebooks to access to the program. We also answer technical questions. We open office hours and answer questions for people who are potential applicants. I'm really proud to say that as we get toward the next round, the 2023 round of the LAMP grants, we will be adding a new component, a much more streamlined component for organizations, for producers, for those who are interested in applying for the LAMP grants, to be able to have much more easier access in a streamlined application process.
Thank you for that. Switching to Undersecretary Taylor, thank you. We'll talk about corn, soy, wheat, other agricultural commodities. We know that trade promotion and export markets are important to farmers throughout, certainly in my state, but all over the country. Our adversaries know that too. We've seen the Chinese Communist Party weaponize agricultural trade again and again, hurting farmers in my state in the process. Speak to the issue, if you would, of using tools like the Market Access Program. What barriers exist to using the Market Access Program to further diversify our ag markets?
Thank you, Senator Brown. So the market access, the market development programs that we have, a suite of market access, the MAP program is the largest. We've received $200 million in funding for that program. I would say it's highly oversubscribed. With our industry partners, they submit proposals to do export market development activities within the frame of that program. And on average, with them self-regulating what they're submitting, we are getting $300 million at least of project proposals. And so I think there's a large need there because these dollars are so effective and important to developing, to maintaining those markets, and to diversifying away from the People's Republic of China and some of the challenges that we've seen with them being our largest trading partner. These are also, I think, an important note when talking about these market development programs is they're highly leveraged. So for every $1 that federal funding that is being utilized, somewhere between $2.30 and $2.40 of industry funds are going to match those resources. And so while the federal government is invested, our industry is invested in these markets and successes there as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Bozeman.
I think what I'd like to do, Madam Chair, we've got a bunch of members here, so I think I'll bat at the end, and we'll just go ahead and go through the line on ours.
All right, you'll bat cleanup. All right. Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Bozeman as well, and to our witnesses. Thank you, ladies, for being with us today. The continued success and growth of Iowa and the ag industry is absolutely dependent on strong trade. Unfortunately, we've seen some hesitation with the Biden administration in this area, and that is evident by the fact that our U.S. trade rep doesn't believe in free trade negotiations, and that it took nearly 20 months to nominate Undersecretary Alexis Taylor. And thankfully, we were able to get Alexis confirmed in the 11th hour of the 117th Congress, because she absolutely is well deserving of this position. So welcome aboard, Undersecretary Taylor. Iowa is the second largest agricultural export state. In 2020 alone, our state generated around $26.2 billion in agricultural cash receipts. Man, that's a lot of money, folks, for the state of Iowa. And with the highest of that in those value commodities being corn, pork, and soybeans. This is why I am glad to reintroduce the bipartisan Expanding Agricultural Exports Act to increase the funding for market access programs and foreign market development programs. Trade is way too critical for many states, including Iowa, and having a strong commodity market, and exports add that value to farmers' bottom line and Iowa's economy. So, Undersecretary Taylor, I'll start with you. Again, it's great to have you on board. In your testimony, you had highlighted the success of the MAP program for increasing U.S. ethanol sales to Korea, which is a great achievement. Many countries are looking to utilize low-carbon biofuels to help achieve their climate goals. Do you agree that biofuels are a cleaner fuel source? And can you talk about the potential that we might have for ethanol exports to India, where they really do need a lot of help?
Thank you, Senator Ernst, for that question, and thank you for your support and this committee's support late last year. It was greatly appreciated. So I do believe biofuels are an important way, as not just the United States, but globally, we are trying to address a changing climate, lower carbon emissions. Obviously, coming from Iowa, I'm well versed in how important the biofuels industry is to the economy, in having a cleaner, renewable resource. I think it is an important component. It is one we are engaging with trading partners on often and frequently. And so I think within India, I think there are many countries where there are a lot of potential, but also large challenges. I think we are open to working with industry partners, the U.S. Grains Council, to make sure that we are targeting those priority markets, having those conversations at appropriately high senior levels to make sure they know this is truly an important issue as we are navigating not just opening trade, but also addressing carbon reduction globally.
Right. No, thank you. And I appreciate that. And as well, the last time that you were in front of the committee, we did discuss the Mexico biotech decree that bans much of our Iowa corn, and Senator Grassley has already spoken to that. But just so folks know, if President AMLO's ban does go into effect, it would cause our overall U.S. economy to lose nearly $74 billion in economic output over a 10-year period. So that's for our awareness, and an outsized portion of that would impact Iowa, which is our top corn-growing state. So I appreciate the attention to that and your work in that area, working with Mexico. Undersecretary Moffett, I want to commend USDA for its efforts in handling highly pathogenic avian influenza and for keeping African swine fever out of the U.S. HPAI, as you know, has been devastating to Iowa's poultry industry, and ASF, it would be the absolute worst case scenario for our, not only Iowa, but all American pork producers. So it really does underscore the importance of the National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Program that was created in our last Farm Bill in 2018. So I just want to commend you on that. We've got a lot more work to do, and we'll be submitting questions for the record. But I'll yield back. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks to our witnesses.
Thank you. Senator Brown, or excuse me, Senator Bennett, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your continued service to the country and to the committee. Secretary Moffitt, I want to say thank you to you for coming to the San Luis Valley in Colorado to visit our potato producers there and to come to understand, I think, how important it is to have the success we've had now opening up the Mexican market for them, and that's work that we have to continue to build on. I will say to my colleagues on the committee that trade is great. We need more trade, and Colorado's producers believe we need more trade. If we don't have the labor to actually get these crops in, we're going to have a huge problem in this country, and we are facing a massive crisis when it comes to farm labor in the United States, including in the San Luis Valley where you visited. So I hope for this Congress, miracle of miracles, that we might actually be able to finally address this, because there is nobody but Congress that can address this. And our growers and our producers and our specialty crop folks in my state, and I know all across the country, are depending on us to do it. And I hope that's not a futile hope that people have. I wanted to ask you about hemp, Secretary Moffitt. In 2018, in this farm bill, the committee legalized the production of hemp. As you know, for the first time, farmers in Colorado were eager to plant and grow it. Unfortunately, burdensome testing requirements and a lack of processing facilities have stunted the potential for this versatile crop, something that, a crop that people all over the country are interested in growing. What USDA resources are available to help farmers and states navigate the complex hemp regulatory framework, and what should we look to do in the upcoming Farm Bill to ensure the success of this crop?
Senator Bennett, thank you. And it was a pleasure to visit the San Luis Valley and to meet with the potato producers there. So we continue to work on maintaining that potato market access that we've worked so hard to achieve. Regarding your question on hemp, as of the January 1st of 2021, we have 42 states that have state-approved plans with USDA to register and to continue the hemp production in those 42 states. The rest of the states, USDA directly works with hemp producers. We also have 53 tribes around the country that also are partnering with us with hemp plans as well. So as far as the question about what resources that we have at USDA to support hemp producers, we've done a handful of things as we've worked since the 2018 Farm Bill on developing the hemp program at the Agricultural Marketing Services. One is to make sure that we have an easy registration process and a streamlined IT process so that hemp producers and testing and all of the procedures that go along with hemp production are in one system that is easy to communicate with producers as well as with the local officials. So that's one key part of it. Also, last week, we released the first weekly National Hemp Report. This National Hemp Report is part of AMS's Market News that will provide weekly, timely information for hemp producers to be able to access information on markets so they can make informed business decisions.
Okay, well, if there's more we can do in the Farm Bill, I hope you'll let us know. Ms. Charles, I had a question for you. As you know, Russia's unprovoked war on Ukraine has significantly damaged global food supply chains, including the export of Ukrainian wheat and other grains to Africa, to Asia, and to the Middle East. And this has exacerbated the food shortages that you talked about in your opening testimony in the Horn of Africa that are already dealing, as you said, with historic drought. How can Congress use the upcoming Farm Bill to provide essential humanitarian food and mitigate the growing global hunger crisis that we're now facing?
I think we saw this year really the importance of flexibility in our toolkit. So to address Russia's war in Ukraine, we both immediately drew down the full balance and have exhausted the full balance of the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Trust to use U.S.-sourced in-kind commodities to get to those places like Yemen and Ethiopia northern Kenya, South Sudan that would be most impacted by shortages and critically price spikes as a result of Russia's war in Ukraine. But we also used IDA assistance, our non-Title II assistance, to procure Ukrainian wheat, working with the World Food Program as proof of concept for that Black Sea grain initiative that's been so important in helping to stabilize wheat prices still at quite a high level, but with less volatility towards the end of the year with that Black Sea grain initiative in place than we saw in the days after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So using kind of all of the different tools in the toolkit to help ensure that that food is not out of reach for the world's hungriest.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Before going to the next question, I just want to thank you, Senator Bennett. Nobody worked harder at the end of the last Congress or through the last Congress on farm worker issues. I could not agree more about what needs to happen around comprehensive immigration reform. Our farmers need a legal system that works for them. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you very much. Senator Highsmith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Ranking Member Bozeman. And I certainly appreciate this all-female delegation at the end of the table discussing agricultural issues. Undersecretary Taylor, this question is for you. The poultry is the #1 commodity in Mississippi in terms of production value, and my state has produced over $3.26 billion worth of poultry in 2022. Really important to us. But as we all know, the avian influenza, the highly pathogenic avian influenza, has been spreading across the country. As Ag Commissioner, when we served as Ag Commissioners together, that is one thing that kept me awake at night, the fear of that. Although the disease itself has primarily affected the egg industry, it has put the poultry industry on high alert and created trade barriers for the poultry industry. I'm thankful for the efforts of APHIS and their staff and employees. They're doing their best under Secretary Moffitt's leadership. But while Mississippi is fortunate to have only detected avian influenza in one commercial broiler flock, not far from my house so far, that could change at any time. China has imposed barriers to trade on poultry products from several states because of the outbreak, directly contradicting an agreement it previously entered with the U.S. If we do not stay on top of this issue, Mississippi will be next. In 2020, China's General Administration of Customs China, GACC, and USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services agreed to a regionalization policy for the avian influenza outbreaks. China agreed that in the event of the outbreak is detected in poultry, a statewide ban would be enforced for all products coming from the state of detection, and the resumption of the imports and exports would be approved no sooner than 90 days post-virus elimination after disinfection and cleaning. This was a huge win for our chicken sector, and under this protocol, China has become the U.S. poultry industry's top export market. Of course, as you and I found out in China, they only want the paws, the feet. Unfortunately, since last August, China has failed to honor the 2020 agreement. And during this time, GACC has not responded to APHIS's request to lift bans on a number of states that are now eligible to resume exports under the agreement. And I am not aware of any real substantive concerns raised by GACC, but it is crucial that we really stand up to China, and not only for the sake of our chicken growers, but to show them we're serious about them holding to their commitments. And this issue has serious implications for the poultry industry, for both Mississippi and the entire country. And China will be watching our response to this. So have you and other senior leaders at USDA, have you engaged China directly on this issue?
Thank you for that question, Senator Hyde-Smith. So I have had many internal discussions within USDA. I have not engaged with China yet on this. This agreement around reopening after a high-path avian influenza outbreak is being led by discussions with USTR under the Phase 1 agreement and ensuring that China lives up to those commitments. We are engaged in those conversations with USTR. But I will say, while China is a very important market, they are also very challenging. And so constant engagement at senior levels is critically important and something I am committed to doing with my Chinese counterparts because I know how important for chickenpox they are for your growers.
Okay, and you answered my second question with that answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll now turn to Senator Fetterman. And again, welcome to the committee.
Hi, and once again, and thank you so very much for the opportunity to be a member of this committee. And
Absolutely.
This is actually my very first meeting. So I'm just really honored to be being an advocate for Pennsylvania's, very, very critical kinds of agricultural industry. So it's going to start out with a very broad kind of question, given, this being just starting in on this. So Ms. Taylor, agriculture is Pennsylvania's single biggest, industry. And we have over 60,000 farms, and 97% are farm-owned. What changes are you needed to the department's trade programs to make them stronger?
So, Senator, I think I appreciate those numbers. I think that's really important to underscore that the majority of our farms in your state and across the country are family-owned and operated. That was the case. I grew up on my family's farm in Iowa that has been in my family for 160 years. I think as I think about the trade programs that we have, we are focused on ensuring that small and mid-sized producers and businesses can also access those programs, that they are able to be navigated, that they can identify diverse market opportunities outside the country that might be of interest to them, and certainly welcome any additional engagement from you on how we can make sure our family farmers are able to tap into our market development programs to connect to the markets and the buyers in those markets and ultimately the consumers who have a desire for our products.
Thank you. And Ms. Moffitt, Pennsylvania has an incredibly strong organic farming industry. In fact, I believe it's the second largest in the nation, actually. But it faces a lot of challenges, as we all know. What changes to the USDA made recently to strengthen the organic label, and what additional tools are needed, do you think?
Senator Fetterman, thank you for that question and for your interest in organic production. So 2 weeks ago, USDA AMS announced the largest change to the National Organic Standards since the inception of the National Organic Program with the Strengthening Organic Enforcement. Strengthening organic enforcement as it will be implemented, and we're already working with producers as well as certifiers on implementation of that rule. Will close some of the loopholes and add new players that have now been part of the organic industry that weren't part of the organic industry in the inception to make sure that we have a level playing field for all producers. At the same time, we're also growing the organic producer base through a transition to organic partnership program. So this is field-based technical assistance driven by producers and organizations in Pennsylvania to mentor new and aspiring organic farmers to be able to attain certification as well. So rulemaking is very important, and also the support that we need and the mentorship network that we need to grow and enhance and increase organic production is another part of what we're working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, well, actually, Madam Chang, just again, looking forward to really getting in and learning so much more from all of you than I'm going to be able to contribute early on here. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. We know Pennsylvania agriculture is very important, and we're glad to have you on the committee to be that voice. Thank you so much. Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member. I'm sure everybody in this room knows that since 1933, this Farm Bill, which was authorized about every 5 years, helps provide affordable, safe, reliable food and fiber for this country. And it's not lost upon me that as I look around the room and see the portraits in the room, that Senator Pat Roberts' legacy stares over all of us. And this is the first Farm Bill in 40 years when his boot prints are not going to be all over it. But I certainly want Kansans and America to know that this is every bit as important to me as it is to him. And as I promised him, I'll make sure that as the father of crop insurance, that we'll be protecting that. So I think about, in so many ways, this Farm Bill is important to Kansas and our guest today, that it was in 1953 that 1953, a farmer in Cheyenne County, Kansas, Peter O'Brien, stood up at a Kansas Farm Bureau meeting and said, we can help people overseas, that we can give food for peace. And we're so proud that that program has continued. Another Kansan, President Eisenhower, signed that into law shortly thereafter. And of course, I believe this is the 21st anniversary of the Dole-McGovern bill, which helps provide food for education. So we appreciate you all helping us carry those legacies forward. Now, on to some tough questions. Forgive me. The first couple are for Undersecretary Taylor. This is a two-part question. The first part, I think, is a yes or no answer. But before you answer it, I'll give the second part. Does the Biden administration believe that Mexico has a right to exclude genetically modified U.S. corn from its market under the terms of the USMCA? And the follow-up question is this. The Biden administration has triggered USMCA's dispute resolution system 6 separate times to complain about Mexico labor conditions. In the meantime, the administration has refused to trigger the USMCA to contest Mexico's planned exclusion of American corn. Madam Secretary, our farmers feel like that this administration is putting Mexican assembly workers ahead of farmers. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for to trigger this mechanism? I'm tired of talking about it, forming committees and praying about it. We think it's time for action.
Senator Marshall, thank you for those questions. I think first and foremost, under USMCA, we have, from the Biden administration, been very clear that their ban on, or proposed ban on genetically engineered corn does not live up to the science-based standards that were housed within USMCA. 2 weeks ago, on my third week on the job, I traveled to Mexico with Ambassador McCaleb to have these conversations directly with our Mexican counterparts. This is a fundamentally important question to how the USMCA was built, but also the global trading system around.
So I'm back up. Do you feel yes or no the Biden administration believes Mexico has a right to exclude genetically modified corn, U.S. corn, from its market under the terms of the USMCA?
We do not, sir.
Okay. Next question, again for Secretary Taylor. Before the 8th Circuit, attorneys for the Justice Department suggested that the USDA are not experts on the use of pesticides. They use this argument to try to convince the 8th Circuit judges to ignore Secretary Vilsack standing by the science in a letter to members of Congress. Will you stand up to the Justice Department and emphasize that we do feel like we have experts in this area in USDA?
Senator, we do have experts on this within USDA. I know many are under Secretary Moffat's purview. We work closely with them as we are working bilaterally with trading partners around the world on these issues that are impacting U.S. agricultural trade.
Well, Secretary Moffat, then how do you feel about the Justice Department basically slapping you all in the face and say that USDA doesn't understand the science?
A lot of what we're doing at APHIS is really engaging in, as Undersecretary Taylor said, really in the bilateral conversations with other countries on making sure that what we're doing and implementing is science-based and that we're following the science. We, of course, and Secretary Vilsack talks a lot about how important the science is, whether that is with our trading partners, whether that is in the domestic industry. We continue to stand by the science and have robust conversations across the administration with science and at the forefront.
Okay, last question. I'm not sure which one of you can answer this, but when it comes to food for peace, in 2010, we were giving commodities as opposed to cash about 10-1. And now about 2/3 of the aid is in cash rather than U.S. commodities. Can someone just kind of explain justify that, where we're going, why are we giving cash instead of commodities?
So about 30% of our Title II is U.S. sourced in-kind commodities. The other cost, it's not about giving cash instead of those commodities. It's really the cost of managing those programs, including significantly increased shipping and transportation costs to move those commodities.
Yeah. Madam Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record a document from CRS that shows that 2/3 of the money is now being given as cash rather than U.S. commodities. Thank you.
Without objection, thank you. Senator Welch, again, welcome to the committee. It's good to make sure that Vermont's voice is still here on the committee.
Well, I'm being observed here.
You are.
Madam Chair.
Every step you make will be observed, yes.
I'm under a little bit of pressure, but I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you and the ranking member. As you mentioned, we work together in the House. And with all of my colleagues, you know, local agriculture, I believe, is absolutely essential to all of us. Most of us aren't farmers, but all of us benefit by not just what farmers do, but by what they do in being the custodians of the landscape. Vermont is very small agriculture, as you know, but we've got to find a way, in my view, to make local agriculture in every district sustainable. And I want to turn to the Honorable Jenny Lester Moffett, who came up. We had a visit from Undersecretary Moffett, who came to an organic dairy farm that has been in the Course family since 1868. And just think about the things that the generations of family went through and now they're milking, I think, over 90 head on this 300-plus acre dairy farm. And they don't use plows. 40 years they haven't plowed the land, and it's really productive and doing a great job. And I just want to thank you for coming up and just demonstrating your commitment to that. But one of the questions that came up was about the organic rules. And it's really important we have organic rules to protect the brand. But it's also important that the rules not be oppressive so that those folks who are honestly trying to comply with them don't have to get buried in paperwork. And that was a question that was asked to you by the fifth and sixth generation of Courses who were present. Maybe you could elaborate on how you're going to try to thread that needle, which I think would be important to all of the farmers that we represent for whom that's a concern.
Thank you, Senator Welch, and it was a pleasure to be up in Vermont last week with you and to meet with the Course family. It is conversations like those around the kitchen table at Dairy Farmer and other farmers is such a valuable part of the job that I have, really informing the decisions that we're making at USDA to make sure they're really rooted in the best interests of farmers and producers and folks around the community. So thank you for having me. Regarding your question about organic rules, yes, organic rules are such an important part, and the National Organic Program is really based on a ever-changing organic industry, and so continuously updating organic rules is an important part. I know that as someone who sold organic product around the world, how important that level playing field is. At the same time, making sure that organic producers, while implementing very rigorous standards, are also not doing paperwork that is unnecessary is an important part of that. So we're making sure a lot of the strengthening organic enforcement rule will actually be about bringing in new brokers, importers, folks who have not traditionally been part and certified under organic standards. There won't be a lot of changes that existing organic producers will see, aside if they're importing product into the country and other trade. So the paperwork that they're currently filling out will not see many changes.
Well, thank you. And, you know, one thing that could be helpful, all of us have organic farmers where if they have issues with how the rules are being implemented or interpreted, we can contact you.
Absolutely.
Because that, I would think, be a common concern. Thank you. And Ms. Charles, that was just a heartbreaking story you told about that woman who lost her 18 cattle and nearly lost the life of her daughter. And it's reassuring and wonderful that food aid saved her life. But there's a constant issue about food aid, leave out the climate issues for a minute, about what we can do to help local agriculture there, because obviously the best food aid is local production. And I know that's a concern for you because it's not as though we're going to be able to really solve that problem, and it's much better for folks in those horrible situations to be independent. Is there any policies that are under consideration about trying to help food insecurity by helping food production locally?
Certainly a big piece of our development assistance at USAID is about poverty reduction and increasing the yields of smallhold farmers in particular to increase food security in the long term. Under the Food for Peace program, the bulk of that is emergency food assistance, but we do have a small percentage, about 10% of that program, that is dedicated to longer-term resilience activities. These are activities often targeting small-scale farmers or helping pastoralists transition to agro-pastoralists to help them build resilience and be more able to withstand climate shocks or conflict shocks by improving productivity, yields, using climate-smart agricultural inputs. And we would like to work with you and your team as you look at reauthorizing the Farm Bill on ways to maximize the effectiveness of those.
Thank you. I yield back. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Thune.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Bozeman for holding today's hearing to consider trade and horticulture titles of the Farm Bill. I look forward to working with you, both of you, and our colleagues on this committee to advance a farm bill that supports the needs of producers and rural America. I also want to thank our witnesses, panelists for being here today to provide your input on this important topic. And I want to, I know it's already been touched on, my colleagues have raised this, but before I turn to my questions, I also want to reiterate my concerns with Mexico's efforts to restrict genetically engineered corn imports, which would threaten food security and stifle ag biotech innovation that benefits both the United States and Mexico. And Under Secretary Taylor, I appreciate USDA's strong stance on this issue and urge USDA to continue holding Mexico accountable on its trade commitments. Under Secretary Taylor, as I've previously mentioned to you, I'm concerned about this administration's lack of attention to expanding market access for U.S. agricultural products. I hope you and your and USTR Ag Chief and Chief Negotiator McKillop's recent confirmations are a turning point for this administration when it comes to ag trade. In your new role, what are some specific new ideas, and in addition to maintaining existing access of corn exports to Mexico, what are your ideas on new market access opportunities for U.S. farmers and ranchers? And is the administration considering market access opportunities in Africa? And then finally, are you advocating for reauthorization of Trade Promotion Authority?
Senator, thank you for those questions. So I think first and foremost, one of the areas that is a priority for me coming into this role is looking at market diversification. Obviously, the People's Republic of China is our largest single agricultural market, but we all saw what an over-reliance on any single market can mean. So looking to help our agricultural exporters, our farmers and ranchers, identify new markets is really critical. I look to a couple different regions of the world first. I think South Asia is a really exciting opportunity. I think about countries like Vietnam, when they have some of the highest macroeconomic growth projected in Asia. They also have an expected 5 million middle-class households going to come online in the next 5 years. So we have an opportunity today and early on to create consumers, lifelong consumers. Their population is also relatively young, so lifelong consumers of American agricultural products. I think there's a lot of potential and exciting opportunity there. One that while the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is still getting underdeveloped in exactly what the outcomes might be for U.S. agriculture, but I am hopeful that we will see successful access there, addressing SPS and non-tariff barriers to knock down some trade hurdles that we currently experience. Likewise, you mentioned Africa. I think Africa is generally has a lot of potential. Specifically, I think Kenya is a very exciting potential market, which obviously we are engaging with there as well. We're also engaging in a couple other areas within the African continent. We are working with the African Continental Free Trade Area that is under negotiation there. But one of the areas that we are providing support is technical support, in particular as they are addressing SPS regulations and how science-based principles can really help form that continental trade agreement. And the U.S. is providing that technical support, which will also benefit our agricultural producers. So I think there is a significant opportunity on the African continent as well.
Let me just say, and again, with by way of IPEF, and I couldn't agree more that the way to isolate China is to do it economically, and that has obviously in that region of the world a lot of national security implications as well. And it just seems like the IPEF didn't address the issue of market access, which is what our agricultural producers in South Dakota are looking for. And, free trade agreements with countries in that region of the world, free trade agreements with other places around the world, some that are kind of what we think are low-hanging fruit. And so it just seems like the administration, no request for trade promotion authority, hasn't been an FTA done, and the issue, or the times there have been at least any sort of discussion around this issue, it's been related to issues that don't have anything to do with market access. So I'm just saying, you guys got to step up your game here, and I hope you will. I just have a few seconds here remaining, but during your confirmation hearing, you mentioned your willingness to work with me on a path forward for mandatory country of origin labeling for beef. Last week, I introduced a bill that would direct USDR and USDA to develop a WTO-compliant means of reinstating cool for beef. My question is, will you provide technical assistance on the legislation? And what actions will you take to coordinate with USTR on a path forward for mandatory cool for beef?
Senator Thune, we would welcome the opportunity to provide technical assistance on that bill and work with you and Congress on implementation with our colleagues at USTR should it pass.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, thank you. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member. It's great to be back in the committee, and I really appreciate the focus today on in part on trade. Of course, trade is incredibly important to our producers in Minnesota, very, very important to the health and vitality of the agricultural community in Minnesota. And we need to make sure that trade is working for everybody, for all of our producers, including small producers. I appreciate the question that Senator Fetterman started with. So, Undersecretary Taylor, let me start with you. I have been focused on how we can support tribal agricultural production in the United States. With this in mind, Senator Hoeven and I worked to include in the 2018 Farm Bill provisions to include tribal representation on trade missions. Historically, the USDA hasn't done everything that I think it could have to support tribal producers. So there's a big opportunity here. For example, in Minnesota, traditional wild rice plays a really important role in Native communities, and there's a growing export market for traditionally harvested wild rice. And, tribal harvesters should have good, fair, equal footing. So can you tell us what strategies are in place to promote greater inclusion of tribal agricultural and food products and trade-related activities? How's it going in USDA, and how can we use the Farm Bill to continue promoting indigenous food products?
Senator Smith, thank you for those questions. Having previously worked for a member from Montana and in the state of Oregon, I fully appreciate how important our tribal nations are and how important making sure our programs that we are administering at USDA are that they are working for them. As you mentioned, the 2018 Farm Bill actually directed USDA to develop some goals around tribal participation within our trade-related activities. We have a key partner in the Intertribal Agriculture Council. We work very closely with them. They are a MAP and FMD participant. They often participate in trade shows, coming from the State Department of Agriculture in Oregon. We also had a Western regional group that was a state and regional trade group tapping into market access programs. I know my colleagues, in particular in Alaska, some of the Alaska tribes participated in these programs as well for promoting seafood exports. So I think we appreciated that direction from the Farm Bill. We are ramping up that engagement with our tribal nations, with, in particular, the Intertribal Agriculture Council, but certainly welcome additional feedback on how we can continue to engage to make sure our programs are working for our tribal nations as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and we'll look to work closely with you on this because it's very important. I have another question for you. This is related to geographic indicators. The European Union continues to impose geographical indications that can block the use of commonly used household names for cheese and other products. And this is a significant barrier, a roadblock for U.S. dairy producers. For example, in Minnesota dairy, including groups like AMPI Co-op, they make cheeses like Parmesan, Asiago, Romano, Fontina, which would face unfair barriers if they tried to export these products to the EU or other countries that are influenced by the EU stance on geographical indications. And in the USMCA, we had hard-fought provisions around this issue that forced Mexico, for example, not to restrict access to U.S. products. So can you tell us how you and your colleagues at USTR are building upon those efforts and update us on what your strategies are and what more you think that we need to do in this area?
Thank you, Senator Smith. I have yet to see feta on a map. So I think at times these GIs are also clearly to restrict our trade, and which is a large concern to in particular our dairy producers, but broader than that as well, can feel the impacts. We have a multiple-pronged, I think, approach to trying to address this. First, working with countries who are either engaging in negotiations with the EU or have concluded negotiations with the EU to articulate our concerns, to make sure they understand the market access rights that we currently have and how that could be impactful there. I think we are also engaging just broadly with our trading partners to ensure, again, that this doesn't become a new trade barrier for our exports. And then we're also engaging in multilateral forum about this issue. So the WTO, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperative Forum, APEC, and then there is a World Intellectual Property Organization as well, where we are engaging to make sure that intellectual property rights are being respected, but that these are not becoming these generic names that we use, that are being used all over the world, do not become a barrier for our trade.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. I have one question which I will put in for the record, having to do, following up a little bit, I think, on Senator Thun's question about how we can expand export markets, specifically looking at Cuba as an export market and what we can do there more. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our panelists who are here today. Trade is vital to Nebraska's agricultural economy. Agricultural exports from Nebraska were valued at $6.5 billion in 2021. New and growing export markets drive value back to rural America. The Market Access Program and Foreign Market Development Programs are critical in helping our producers develop those new markets. I agree with many of my colleagues today that as we look toward the next Farm Bill, it will be critical to ensure that these programs do continue. In order to fully realize our investment from those market development programs, though, the United States government has an important role to play. At a bare minimum, we must uphold our existing trade agreements. And Undersecretary Taylor, I did appreciate your remarks to Senator Grassley earlier that there is no negotiating on Mexico's ban on biotech corn because the science is clear on that. You mentioned that Mexico's livestock sector needs our corn, and that is a large market for Nebraska farmers. But Nebraska is also unique in that we grow half of the nation's food-grade white corn, with Mexico being our top export market. And I understand Mexico has claimed that there are cultural reasons for wanting to ban imports of white corn. So can you assure us that when you say there is no compromise with Mexico on their attempts to ban biotech corn, that also includes our food-grade white corn?
Thank you, Senator Fisher. From the conversations that I have had with my Mexican counterparts, we talked about it broadly to include our yellow corn and our white corn exports. There are concerns, I think, in both, and fundamentally the science is the same. As it is for many other genetically engineered products that have been studied for decades, the safety of these products are not in question.
Thank you. And I agree with you also on your point that this has a broader impact. If we have a country who's claiming in a trade agreement that they're not going to accept our products that are safe, GMOs, they are safe, that's a message we need to get out, not just in our international trade, but also here within this country. So I appreciate you standing firm on that and making it clear that GMOs are safe, they are secure, they are healthy, they help to feed the world. We can go on and on with this as we continue to move forward. So I thank you for that. In December, I led 25 of my colleagues. It was a bipartisan letter that we sent to the administration to hold Mexico to their commitments under the USMCA, and we haven't received a response yet from that. So could you check on that and let us know how the administration plans to proceed?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, you note in your testimony that the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, there are meaningful opportunities in there to address non-tariff barriers and sanitary and phytosanitary restrictions. I agree addressing those items would be helpful. However, I have heard from many Nebraska ag producers concerned about the lack of any meaningful market access provisions as part of the administration's trade agenda. So in your capacity as Undersecretary, will you advocate that market access provisions, specifically for agriculture, are included as part of the negotiations for the IPEF?
Senator, thank you for that question. So I believe broadly that market access, addressing tariffs, but also at the SPS side of trade is critically important. Doing one without the other does not often equate to market access. We have seen that around the world. I think while tariff liberalization broadly has been critical to U.S. agriculture, there have been parts that have not felt that as equal. I heard this often from some specialty crop producers in the state of Oregon about some of the challenges that they experienced. So what I would say is I'm interested in pursuing trade policy that balances the need for the diverse set of our agricultural producers in this country in pursuing new and diversified markets.
Thank you. I look forward to continuing our discussions on this. And a special thank you for really holding firm on the yellow corn and the white corn with Mexico, and my thanks to the Secretary as well.
Thank you very much. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd add my thanks to Senator Fisher's on the corn issue. Minnesota is actually fourth in the country for exports. Ag exports, so this hearing is really important to us. And I also thank Senator Smith for her question on dairy, something else we care a lot about. I'm just going to start broader, Ms. Taylor, with the fact that we see room to grow with exports. According to the 2021 study on the export market development programs you cite, for every $1 invested in these programs, U.S. ag export value increased by more than $24, which is pretty incredible. Yet it found that these programs are underfunded. I know Senator Brown asked you a little bit about this. But could you talk about how we compare to other international trading partners? According to your testimony, the EU's export program for wine alone was greater than the entire budget of all of USDA's market development programs. I think that should concern our colleagues when we look at a balance, as much as we enjoy pairing up with the EU and drinking their wine. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. These programs, I think, are critically important, and others around the world also have their own versions of programs to promote their own products. And we are going head-to-head in many of these markets around the world competing. And these tools that Congress and this committee has provided is critical to letting our producers get into these markets, to navigate oftentimes complex regulatory systems, language barriers, to compete. Our programs, just MAP alone, while it's funded at $200 million, we on average are seeing about $300 million of requests. And I would say that's with our industry partners self-regulating because they know we have limited funds. We see something similar in the Foreign Market Development Program, FMD. That program is funded at $34.5 million, and we roughly get about $50 million of requests. So they are highly prescribed funds, but also highly leveraged, as you point out. The impact and return we receive is pretty impressive.
Next up, Cuba. I lead the bill on opening up a market to Cuba. 95% of our customers living outside our borders. Absent lifting the embargo, I am interested, which I would do, I'm interested in what options USDA has to facilitate more American ag exports to Cuba. Have you considered allowing Cuba to be part of the emerging market program, which would facilitate easier exports to Cuba?
Thank you.
And I note this has always been a bipartisan bill.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. So I think Cuba is an interesting market with a lot of untapped potential. There are obviously huge challenges as well. In the 2018 Farm Bill, MAP was opened up to be allowed explicitly in Cuba, and we have seen some cooperators and the industry drive projects there. I believe the Emerging Market Program did not have that same authority get granted to it, and so I think that would be something we would be interested in exploring with you in this committee as you explore work on reauthorizing the Farm Bill.
Thank you. Again, this would be American products. And as we know, we were making some headway there. We still have work to do on the human rights front, many other things. But I hope we can go back to looking at that. My last question, turkeys. Minnesota, #1 turkey producer in the country. Minnesota turkey farmers have once again been significantly impacted by avian influenza. Went better this time, I think, in terms of the quick response. Senator Cornyn and I had worked hard on a vaccine bank and also on funding for these emergencies in this Farm Bill, supported by all the members. As this outbreak continues, because it's still going on, how is USDA adjusting to address and mitigate what's happening? And specifically, I know impacted countries in the EU are considering implementing a vaccine strategy. What can be done in the Farm Bill to incorporate a vaccine strategy without impacting trade?
So, Senator, I think, as you mentioned, that it has gone better. I think we learned a lot of lessons from the high-path avian influenza outbreak in 2014, 2015, that we spent the time since working with trading partners, working with the World Organization on Animal Health around a regionalization approach and some science-based standards. And so I think we have seen a different reaction this time than we did in 2014 and 15. We still have many challenges, and so we are still working to lift restrictions that maybe don't line up with the WOA standards. Just recently, we were able to work with Taiwan. They lifted restrictions on 12 states. So this is a continued process of engagement. And I think a really important, we've made some important progress thanks to our technical colleagues in APHIS, but we're going to have to continue to work at this.
Okay, and I'm not going to ask another question, but I know you were asked by Senator Bennett about hemp. I'm remembering Senator McConnell coming to these hearings of a markup of the bill for the very reason of including hemp provisions, but there continues to be confusion and frustration among hemp growers regarding the gaps in regulation and guidelines I know you're aware of at the FDA, DEA, and USDA, and I'm hoping we can fix those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Tuberville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Bozeman, look forward to working with you all on this very important bill. Agriculture in my state of Alabama is the #1 industry, and we're proud of it. The problem we're having is we had through COVID is we've lost a lot of family farms in our state, and I hope doing this farm bill that would really keep in mind of what we're doing and how we're doing it for all farmers, but especially try to keep as many family farms as we possibly can. Most of my questions have been asked, but I'm going to ask this question of Ms. Taylor. Our cotton producers in Alabama and across Southeast export most of their cotton overseas in one form or another. You know what MAP is and FMD. You have any new plans for these two programs?
Senator, I think they are well-established programs. They have shown a lot of success. I will look forward to working with Congress on any changes that you all might be seeking, but from our perspective, they are highly effective programs.
So you're satisfied with them, how they're working?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Moffitt, I understand that our nurseries face the emerging threat of the box tree moth. Serious pests of boxwoods that have begun to spread into U.S. from Canada. Boxwoods are the number one evergreen scrub crop grown in the U.S. and very important to our state in Alabama. You know, I'm told the USDA is Animal Plant Health Inspection Service begin working well and with the industry, horticulture industry for this. Do you have any comments on this?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And yes, the Animal Plant Health Inspection Services, APHIS, has been working with the industry, making sure that we have movement control so that we're containing the pests where it is currently, and then also working to eradicate it. We're also working with Canada to make sure that we have movement control and restriction control in there. Our engagement with industry, as you recognize, is ongoing, and that is a vital part of our response mechanism.
Yeah, and it's probably, you well know, co-grown grass is covering over 200,000 acres in Alabama, 75% of infested land and forest. You know, the weed damages crops, reduces forest productivity. What research is APHIS doing, to combat this?
Senator, that's a great question. I can talk with APHIS and get some more information, and we can make sure we get back to you on that information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Senator Lujan, and I do have to say, you are no longer at the end of the dais. You are moving up quickly.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair. It's incredible what 2 years will do.
That's right.
For somebody. So I
Exactly.
appreciate that to you and the ranking member. First off, thank you both for your leadership and to all the staff that are here. And welcome to our new colleagues as well. Look, in New Mexico, as I hope you all know, we have a few things that we love, one of them being our chili. And I remind my friends from Colorado that they should be grateful to New Mexico for the seed that they got from us, for the chili they brag about, just so long as they don't forget where it came from. The reason I bring that up is there are many challenges taking place in New Mexico and in different parts of the country when it comes to specialty crops. In our state, not just our chili, but pecans, pistachios, onions matter to us, our dinner table, job opportunities, things of that nature. We have seen labor challenges throughout the country, and we're feeling that in New Mexico as well. Specialty crop block grants matter to us. They're critical in enhancing the competitiveness of these crops in domestic and foreign markets. Now, my question for Deputy Secretary Moffitt is, can you describe if or how the specialty crop block grant program is able to assist industry in modernizing specialty crop harvesting, and especially with the lean towards a state like New Mexico, large in geography, 2.1 million population. We don't do as well as our other states do in the region or across the country when it comes to leveraging these programs. So I'm looking to see how we can learn more about, strengthen them, but ensure that for producers like the ones we have in New Mexico, that they have access to these programs.
Senator Lujan, thank you so much for that question and your interest in the specialty crop block grant. What is very unique about the specialty crop block grant is that block grant component, which is a partnership with the state departments of agriculture, so that the state departments of agriculture with USDA work on identifying what are the critical needs for the specialty crop industry in that state and really tailoring the grants that are administered in those states toward the needs in that state. So as you talk about, the specialty crop block grant funds research, production challenge research particularly, but research writ large as well, which is certainly a big component of what the industry needs to enhance that competitiveness of specialty crop. There's also promotion, of course, as well through the specialty crop block grant and education. But given your question on mechanization and the production challenges that are unique to New Mexico, is a key part of how that specialty crop block grant and the design of the block grant with the states really working with industry on what projects are really needed to advance and grow specialty crops in your state. So I do lean you toward the research component of that as a key
I appreciate that. And in areas where New Mexico has not been successful through the State Department of Agriculture in conjunction with producers, where we've not been successful, is that an area that I have your commitment we can work with you on to better understand how the application from the state can be improved such that we're more successful in the future?
Senator, absolutely. We can work with the state directly. We will be happy to work also with your staff and facilitating those conversations. There's also a specialty crop multi-state grant program where we can address issues that cover multiple states across a region or across the country and addressing different issues as well.
I appreciate that. With the program, are there any updates, any areas to strengthen, given challenges that we now see over the last few years, with any changes that would be needed?
The program continues as it has been for some time. We're always working on updating that. One big piece that we updated in the specialty crop block grant is information that we get back from grant recipients. Reporting is important, but making sure that reporting is not an increased burden on recipients is a key part. So that was a big update we did last year with the grant program. I also want to thank the committee as well as Congress for leadership during the pandemic in adding additional funds to the specialty crop block grant to further enhance and grow specialty crops.
I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, I have two other questions. I'll submit them into the record just to be cognizant of time. In an area of a program we're real proud of back in New Mexico called Nourish New Mexico, and the cooperative agreement under the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Plan that I want to pursue more and have a conversation about. And then in the area of trade promotion, which I hope to visit more with Ms. Taylor about as well, specific to New Mexico pecans, where I don't want to get in a fight with other states, but they're as delicious, if not more delicious, anywhere you go. If you want to have a competition with me, we'll lay it down and we'll do it right. But there's some challenges that our producers in New Mexico have in other parts of the world where some states have done better. I won't get into why our pecans deserve to be at the top of that list, but I look forward to chatting more with you. And I thank you, Madam Chair, and to our ranking member.
Thank you so much, and we're so glad you're going to be part of this important Farm Bill work that we're doing on the committee. Thank you. Senator Braun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm from Indiana, which is the #1 manufacturing state per capita in the country. Wisconsin's right behind us. Agriculture is right there in behind it. I've been a tree farmer and involved in agriculture for a long time, owned a turkey farm for 32 years, half owner of it. In general, what's besetting agriculture more than anything, and I'm going to focus on especially the row crop side of it. I remember when you could put out an acre with direct inputs of soybeans for $70 an acre, $140 for corn, We are so far away from that. The high altitude of financial risk involved with farming across the spectrum is significant. So we've talked about USMCA, other things that we depend upon, expanding markets across the world. If that doesn't happen, with the help of our federal government, we're making the hardest job God created even more difficult. So keep that in mind in general. Specifically, we're not the #1 turkey producer, but we're one of the top poultry producers in the country, and avian flu is a big deal. I'm part of legislation that wants to acknowledge that it's a known threat. We've been running into it far too often, still uncertain how it happens, but we're getting a good idea. But we ought to be certain about protocol when it does occur. So I'm introducing some legislation that would try to kind of regionally band how you're dealing it, to where you're not holding a whole state at bay in the process of navigating through it. And that is an issue from ducks, turkeys, chickens in our state, and it's going to be around. So I want to make sure through this legislation that there's real definition on what happens to still be able to market your product once you know you've got a case of it. Tell me what you think about that, Undersecretary Taylor, and then I've got another question after that, so maybe give me 30 seconds or so.
Thank you, Senator. So I think we've done a lot of work with trading partners since 2014, 2015, and it is, while we still have some challenges in some markets, the reaction globally has been drastically different. They did not pull whole country bans on, which is what we were seeing initially. We work with the experts at APHIS to keep the smallest regionalized geographic area possible, depending on where those high path outbreaks are. And so I would offer our assistance in working with you on this bill on how our trading partners might react, but also obviously the experts on this disease at APHIS will be critically important to say, what does the science say around how small of a region that would make sense. We also have been working very closely with the World Organization on Animal Health and have made great progress there on what the science says and what appropriate standards are, and that has only helped us with our trading partners.
Thank you. I'll hold you up to that, and if you do that, that will be good, I think, to get this moving and across the line. Undersecretary Moffett, hemp has been something many farmers have been talking about, trying to get into it. There's so much uncertainty about it because we don't have a real established infrastructure for it. I think that's going to happen over time. When you look at how big the industrial markets are on hemp across the world, I think we need to start getting with it. Senator Tester and I have got legislation to create a new designation within the USDA for a licensing framework for producers who only produce industrial hemp. And producers who opt into this program would be barred from harvesting flowers and resin, and in exchange would receive more regulatory certainty. Again, I'd love to see help from the USDA to give some certainty to what is a very kind of fragile fledgling market. Is that something you'd be comfortable with?
Senator Braun, thank you for that question, and we're happy to engage with your staff as you develop this bill and provide technical assistance so that it is something that we can work on implementing should that bill pass.
And by the way, Senator Tester is one of the other few senators actually involved in agriculture. I think he still drives the tractor now and then. So one final question. Senator Tuberville hit on it, on the forestry side of life, which oftentimes gets not the attention it should, because it's a long-term product. Invasives are impacting forestry much more than it is row crop. You've got chemicals in a defined field that generally get rid of them. There's stuff like stilt grass, not to mention the emerald ash borer that's eliminated what was about 8% of our trees, ash trees. Will the USDA and is the USDA taking it seriously? Because hardwoods in a state like Indiana, when you get through the full food chains, about as much as the agricultural side would be. And yet it seems to get second fiddle in terms of attention.
Senator Braun, thank you for that question. Forest pests are of primary concern, of utmost concern at APHIS. I had the opportunity last year to visit the Forest Pest Materials Lab in Massachusetts, out on the Cape, to learn about the work that's being done, the research that's being done on forest pests. There are many, as you described already, and many more, and they are, and our forests, our national forests, our state forests, all of our forests is a really critical part of our network and our agricultural economies and our rural economies across America. So we take forest pests very seriously and continue to do and advance research and work with our partners across the world in advancing that research and making sure that we're not introducing new pests as well in the effort.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to both you and the ranking member, Senator Boozman, for holding this hearing today. Appreciate it very much. Undersecretary Taylor, I have a number of questions for you. Thanks to all of you for being here today. Appreciate it. One of the programs that's very important to us in North Dakota is the sugar program. The Red River Valley, which we share, Red River Valley of the North, which we share with Minnesota, it's about a $3 billion industry. And obviously, it's important that we pass it and we get it right. And of course, I should also want to remind you that this is very important to the chairman of the committee too, because they do raise sugar beets in Michigan. So I know that it's a matter of great importance to our chairman as well. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. But it's about a $3 billion industry.
We all like sugar.
And I know the ranking member is trying to downplay his intense concern about the program as well. I'm not sure if they do any sugar beets in Arkansas, but they do other things, and they like having us support them on their crops. So he's a strong advocate as well. But anyway, the policy is designed to provide a cost-effective safety net for our sugar producers and avoid foreign producers dumping on the market, which provides a low-cost, consistent sugar price for American consumers. And it's very important that the program is administered in a way that's consistent with the intent in the Farm Bill. So my question is, do you agree that USDA's, your own metric, the Department of Ag's metric, a stocks-to-use ratio between 13.5% and 15.5% is appropriate when determining whether the sugar market is adequately supplied? I know that's kind of technical, but it's very important because it has a big impact for our producers.
Thank you, Senator Hoeven. So the sugar program is being administered between myself under the Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs Mission Area and the FPAC and Undersecretary Robert Bonney. This is a newer structure as USDA was reorganized several years ago with the creation of my position. I believe, we have long administered the sugar program within that stocks-to-use ratio. It is well known, and it was developed to really try to meet the intent that Congress laid out about adequate supplies at reasonable prices in the Farm Bill. And we are committed to using that metric to manage the sugar program.
Well, and we actually had Secretary Bonney out to see us and met with our producers, which we appreciate very much. And I think it was productive for him to hear from them as well. But based on your answer then, when the market's adequately supplied according to that measure, then you believe that we should not be allowing additional imports, even though we get pressure from some of our trading partners to do that sometimes, as long as we're meeting those metrics.
Correct, Senator. That is how we have historically run the program and how we are running that program today. Because again, we are trying to be transparent in how we are running the program and making those decisions. In addition, we have the suspension agreement with Mexico, which lays out a tie to the stocks-to-use ratio. So I think that's an important component there.
Glad you touched on that, because they're always pushing to increase their imports into our market. And I find that interesting at a time when they want to restrict our corn exports to Mexico. So on the one hand, we need to resist that. They're efforts to dump into our market. And on the other hand, they need to abide by WTO when it comes to sales of GMO corn to Mexico. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I do believe that the provisions laid out within the USMCA, what Mexico committed to, are foundationally built upon science, and we have grave concerns that their proposed ban on GE corn walks away from that science that they have committed to. And I actually was in Mexico 2 weeks ago, meeting with my counterparts to highlight our concerns from what Mexico has proposed.
And I've seen the Ag Secretary, Secretary Vilsack, pushing back, and I trust you all are going to continue to do that, right?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. And then trade in the Pacific. Obviously, that's complicated. We've tried a number of different approaches. Tell me about how you're going to expand our ability to sell and to trade in the Pacific.
I think this is a very exciting part of the world. They have growing middle classes, they have growing economies, and they have a generally young population. When I think about Vietnam, for instance, they're projected to add 5 million middle-class households over the next 5 years. So we have the ability today to build trading relationships, to help our producers get into those markets, to build those long-term relationships and build and create lifelong consumers of American food and agriculture products. I think that's a huge market potential. We at USDA are invested in these regions, and we've got our Foreign Agricultural Service has teams on the ground in this region. We are working with U.S. exporters to get their products in. We focus many trade activities. And then, of course, we also have the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which we are focused on. While it's still young, we are focused on...
That's why I bring it up.
Providing meaningful access to knocking down those non-tariff trade barriers that are limiting factors today. And we are interested to see where that framework can go to continue to help advance U.S. agricultural interests in the region.
Right on. And I've joined with Senator Thune on a letter in regard to that. So I appreciate that very much. I have a very pithy question on specialty crops, but I know that our chairman, being an expert on specialty crops, will sufficiently grill you on that. So I will pass on that, and then just once again thank the chairman.
Thank you.
And the ranking member for holding.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much,
Appreciate
Senator Hoeven. We look forward to working closely with you as we do the Farm Bill. So, last but certainly not least, Senator Boozman.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. This has really been an excellent hearing, and hopefully it is just the example of the hearings we're going to have in the future. This is, like I say, has been excellent. And the reason it is, so much of this is trade related. 40% of the products in Arkansas are exported. So we have to protect the markets that we have and again, constantly look for new markets. We are excited that you're on board, Undersecretary Taylor, and like I say, in such an important position. Undersecretary Taylor, rice and wheat farmers in Arkansas, rice wheat farmers throughout the country, are seriously impacted by India's blatant WTO violations. Can you tell us a little bit about what you all are doing in your partnership with Ambassador McCaleb, how you're able to take some steps to hold India accountable? Is there anything that we as a committee or as a Congress can do to be helpful in that regard? How can we make sure that this egregious over-subsidization, and those words aren't too strong, I think everybody agrees with that, how can we hold them accountable?
Thank you, Senator Boozman. We continue to engage India in multilateral forums on this issue, raising questions within the WTO, and working on, in years past, counter notifications to bring out really what we view as the truth behind their subsidization policy here. I have been engaging as with my team since I've been at USDA on this topic, as I committed to you I would. And I think, while we do have grave concerns, and it is one that we are looking at multiple approaches to try and address within, again, the multilateral forum to try and bring some resolution and certainty to our rice and wheat producers who are seeing impact from these subsidies.
Right. Thank you. Undersecretary Moffitt, I want to acknowledge the incredible work that APHIS does. They do an excellent job in ensuring the health and viability of U.S. animal agriculture and the agency's commitment to science-based animal health protocols and standards necessary to facilitate market access for U.S. producers. As Undersecretary, and this has come out again repeatedly with the poultry issue, and Senator Hyde-Smith, really laid it out very, very well. I guess the question is, with the pathogenic avian influenza outbreak, can you tell us again how we can help you, what you can do, and then also with Undersecretary Taylor, Secretary McCaleb, the whole deal, what can we do to push this forward? It really is kind of a common sense thing. The science is with us. What steps do we need to take to actually get this done so that we can get poultry from these areas back in China and other countries?
Senator Bozeman, thank you so much for that question and your recognition of the work that APHIS has done. We've had over 800 employees deployed over the course of the past year, and that is 800 APHIS employees. This is in partnership with states who are also lockstep, as well as the industry and us, in implementing biosecurity measures and really tackling and making sure that every time we have an uptick in high-path avian influenza, we stamp it out as quickly as possible to do exactly that, to make sure that the disease is not spreading beyond the borders of that one operation. And I appreciate your recognition of the success it's had, and it's thanks in large part to funding that was received in the 2018 Farm Bill, taking lessons learned from the 2015 outbreak. We have been working, and our national vet has been working across the world in conversations with national vets across the world, providing strong epidemiological data, making sure that the regionalization approach that we've all agreed on through the World Organization for Animal Health is being acknowledged and worked on. We're working on updating the work that we're doing so that we are focused on the most at-risk areas, the most at-risk commercial operations, so that we continue to advance and keep open as many markets as possible while continuing to stamp out the disease. That strong relationship that our veterinarian has with other national veterinarians has been able to keep open, as Undersecretary Taylor mentioned, keep open many markets that we did not have open in the 2015 outbreak.
Very good. Ms. Charles, again, the focus has been so much on trade. You have such an important mission. We're in a situation now where, we've drawn down the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Trust for the first time in nearly 20 years, and based on urgent need for emergency commodities, there's all kinds of issues going on. Very quickly, can you talk to us a little bit how we can ensure that the original food and program goals, providing food to hungry people, are met during this emergency? And I hope that maybe through the subcommittee that we can have you back and where we can really discuss this issue, and go forward. But
I'd be happy to come back and talk in more detail with the subcommittee and work with you as you look to reauthorize the Farm Bill. I think we have a lot to be proud of over the last many years, and in particular the last year, as with the authorities you all have provided, with the supplemental funding that Congress more broadly has provided, how we've been able to respond, including using tools like the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Trust, to a truly extraordinary year. But I think we can anticipate high levels of hunger in the years to come, and would love to work with you on greater flexibility in the program to respond to that.
good. Well, thank all of you very much for the great work you do.
Thank you so much. And thanks to each of you. We very much appreciate your leadership and the roles that you're playing and having the opportunity to be here with us today. The trade and horticultural programs we've discussed cover a lot of ground, and but one theme is very clear, and that is these Farm Bill investments support much needed economic opportunities, both here at home and abroad for our farmers. So this is a very important part of the Farm Bill. Look forward to working with Senator Bozeman and all the members of the committee as we craft these titles. The record will remain open for 5 business days, and the hearing is adjourned.